What is Descartes trying to do in first meditation? Right? So, in just a few words, he wants to rebuild all knowledge from ground up. He sees that much of what he once believed in science, philosophy, and even daily life was built on assumptions that could potentially be wrong. Okay, so he adopts a strategy which, in his own words, is described in these terms, right? So, to find certainty, and I'm now quoting from the first meditation, to find certainty, I must first doubt everything that can possibly be doubted. Unquote. This process of doubting everything that can possibly be doubted, he calls the method of doubt. अच्छा देखिए, अब हम ये देखते हैं कि ये मेथड ऑफ डाउट जो है ये डेकार्ट साहब इसको एग्जीक्यूट कैसे करते हैं, ठीक है? तो वो सबसे पहले तो टारगेट करते हैं अपने सेंसेस को, विच इज़ द मोस्ट ऑब्वियस सोर्स ऑफ नॉलेज दैट वी हैव, राइट? तो बोलते हैं यार कि इतनी सारी चीज़ें हैं दैट आई ऑलवेज टुक एज सर्टन, एंड यू नो, एंड he's remember that he's meditating, and he's doing it in a way that will help him suspend his beliefs, right? तो वो बोलते हैं यार ये आसमान, ज़मीन, ये रंग, ये शेप्स, ये आवाज़ें, ये सब कुछ जो है मैं तो समझता रहा हूँ कि ये सर्टन है, ये दे एक्चुअली एग्जिस्ट, लेकिन आते तो ये मुझ तक पहुँचते तो हैं थ्रू माई सेंसेस, राइट? सो दे कम टू मी थ्रू सेंस परसेप्शन. आप उसका सवाल ये है, कैन आई ट्रस्ट माई सेंसेस? And then he says, well, but sometimes they deceive. And then he gives some examples, right? जब चीज़ें दूर हैं आपसे बहुत, तो वो आपको छोटी नज़र आती हैं. So, of course, your eye sees their size as small, but they're actually not small, right? And so your perception is in some ways deceiving you. There are many other examples you can think of, but ultimately all that you needed was just a little bit of a tiny doubt, right? And that if you have that, you can exclude this as not entirely certain. तो वो सेंसेस को तो डिस्कार्ड कर देते हैं एज डाउटफुल सोर्सेज ऑफ नॉलेज, राइट? अच्छा देखिए, सेंसेस को डेकार्ट ने क्वेश्चन तो कर दिया है, लेकिन अब वो इस मूव को, विच इज़ अ मेथडोलॉजिकल मूव, वो उसको एक्सप्लेन कैसे कर रहा है. वो ये कह रहे हैं ये तमाम सेंसेस जो हैं यार, जिसमें हमारी साइट शामिल है, हियरिंग, टच, टेस्ट, स्मेल, all they give us are impressions of the world, right? But these impressions vary, because they depend on a lot of different conditions. They depend on the distance of the object from us, the light, the state of our body, and there can be so many other conditions that can affect how we use our senses in order to perceive the reality. So, just because they sometimes deceive us, they can't be a foundation for certain knowledge, right? So, this is how he introduces the first layer of doubt, which is what he calls sensory deception. But then he says, yeah, ruko zara. Sometimes beliefs are, sensory beliefs are also indubitable, aren't they? मतलब वो जैसे होता है ना, यू एंटिसिपेट एन ऑब्जेक्शन टू योर आर्ग्यूमेंट एंड देन यू ट्राई एंड एड्रेस दैट ऑब्जेक्शन. ओके, सो बोलता है कि इवन इफ सेंसेस समटाइम्स डिसीव, आर देयर स्टिल थिंग्स दैट आई कांट पॉसिबली डाउट. Like I'm sitting here right now and making this video for you, or that I am wearing this t-shirt, right? And so, can I really doubt that? I mean, that would seem ludicrous, right? And so the beliefs sometimes seem immediate, very immediate and obvious. But then he presses further, and this is where the plot really gets interesting. He's not really stopping at ordinary doubt. He wants to push this method of doubt to its very limits, right? And so he introduces a second layer here, which is also called a dream argument. अब वो करता ये है कि ही ऑब्जर्व्स दैट जब हम ख्वाब देख रहे होते हैं तो हम एक्सपीरियंस करते हैं एग्जैक्टली कुछ ऐसे सीन्स जो हम रियलिटी में भी देखते हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल सिटिंग बाय द फायर, टॉकिंग टू फ्रेंड्स, वॉकिंग आउटडोर्स, ये सब कुछ हम एक्सपीरियंस कर सकते हैं all the while when we are asleep. So, what is to tell us that we are actually not dreaming right now? This is really interesting. I don't know how many of you have seen this movie called Inception, in which there are multiple levels of dreams, and each dream has its own reality, right? तो डेकार्ट ये कह रहा है कि यार हाउ कैन आई एवर बी श्योर दैट आई एम अवेक एंड नॉट ड्रीमिंग राइट नाउ, राइट? There are no sure signs to distinguish. Are there any waking from dreaming? And even if individual dreams are, which they are at times, strange, they still use the same elements like colors, shapes, people. Even if they are nightmares, they will still have these elements, right? Won't they? And so the question becomes, not am I dreaming this very moment, but rather, is there any mark, any indication by which I can tell with certainty that I'm awake? And the answer is no. And so he's saying, oh, maybe I'm dreaming. इसको थोड़ा रिविजिट करें और समझने की कोशिश करें. If your senses are functioning perfectly, they might not correspond to reality because of any number of reasons, right? I could be having experiences with no external world at all, which means I'm imagining an external world, even when the external world doesn't exist. Sometimes we can do that, can't we, in a dark room, right? So you can imagine that you're sitting on a beach with your eyes closed in your room, right? And so even if sensory data are vivid and very coherent, they might still be false, right? And so the content of perception does not guarantee its source. And do you see how this dismantles the trustworthiness of empirical reality? Your senses can deceive you, and even if they're not deceiving you, you could still be in dreams, right? But even in dreams, something will always seem to remain true. तो ये फिर एक नई ऑब्जेक्शन लेके आ रहे हैं ना कि चलिए मान लेते हैं कि हमारे सेंसेस हमें रिसीव करते हैं, दैट्स पॉइंट नंबर 1. लेकिन बाज़ औक़ात वो हमें डिसीव नहीं करते. ऑब्जेक्शन टू पॉइंट नंबर 1. एंड देन ही सेज इवन इफ दे डोंट डिसीव, it's also possible that I'm not even awake. So the senses are still not a certain foundation for knowledge, because of the possibility that I may be dreaming. So for a moment it might seem that Descartes has found what may be regarded as indubitable truths, such as the mathematical truths, the geometrical truths, and so on. वो बोलते नहीं, इधर रुके. What if an evil genius, a supremely powerful and cunning, has directed all his efforts to deceiving me? What if every time I add 2 and 3, see the sun, or draw a triangle, that I'm being tricked? इस पर ज़रा गौर कीजिए. important you understand it. He's saying कि मान लिया कि 2+3 मुझे 5 ही नज़र आता है, लेकिन क्या ये मुमकिन नहीं है कि ये 2+3 की 5नेस जो है वो मेरे जहन में एक ईवल डीमन ने इंसर्ट की हुई है? दैट evil demon is organizing my mind to see the reality in a certain way. This deceiver can manipulate both perception as well as my thought. यानी ये मेरी सेंस परसेप्शन को भी मैनिपुलेट कर सकता है और मेरी एबिलिटी टू रीजन जो है उसको भी ये मैनिपुलेट करता है. And if that is the case, then even the clearest truths can also be false. And now imagine this: the moment Descartes introduces this scenario of this evil genius, he has succeeded in suspending belief in everything. फिजिकल वर्ल्ड पे तो वो अपने सेंसेस को डाउट में ला करके ऑलरेडी बिलीफ को सस्पेंड कर चुका है ना, बट मैथमेटिक्स को भी उसने सस्पेंड कर दिया, इवन लॉजिक, because none of that he claims is indubitable, because an evil genius can possibly exist and can organize my mind in a way that I see reality in a certain manner and I think in a certain manner. So now, until I can find something more indubitable, everything is already collapsed. So he has been able to suspend his belief in all reality, in all reason, by the end of meditation 1. Meditation 1 जो है ना, वो एक argument है about collapse. He collapses all foundation of certain truth, all of his beliefs in the empirical world as well as in the ability of the reason to reach the truth. He has resolved to treat the world as false, and not because it is false, but because doing so will allow him now to find, to look for and find one belief that no possible deception can shake. This belief, as we will find in the second meditation, is summed up in a very famous sentence: I think, therefore I am. Remember this, and let me come back to you with the second meditation.